The great council chamber looked like the inside of a giant silver dome. Rows and rows of seats curved high into the air, and every seat was filled. Creatures from every corner of the galaxy had come. Some had shining scales, some floated inside clear spheres, some had too many eyes, and some had no eyes at all. But today, all of them were focused on one thing: humanity. At the center of the chamber stood Ambassador Zethar, one of the most respected leaders in the Galactic Federation. He was tall, broad, and cold as stone. When he spoke, the room listened. "For 3 full cycles," he said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber, "humans have ignored our warnings. They build war fleets while speaking of peace. They move into new star systems without approval. They resist our oversight. They reject our command." A wave of agreement moved through the hall. Some delegates tapped their seats. Others made clicking sounds or low hums. A few simply stared at the human section with open dislike. In that section sat only one person, Ambassador Sarah Chen. She looked small compared to the others, but she did not look afraid. Her hands rested calmly in her lap. Her back was straight. Her face was quiet, but her eyes were alert. She listened as if every word mattered, even when those words were aimed like knives. Zethar raised one arm toward her section. "Humans say they want peace," he said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. "Yet they build ships designed for war. They spread too fast. In only a short span of galactic history, they have reached dozens of systems. They refuse limits. They refuse control. If this behavior continues, the balance of our Federation will collapse." Again, the room agreed. Sarah said nothing. She knew what he was leaving out. He did not mention that human warships were the same ships that protected trade lanes from pirates. He did not mention that humans settled dead, empty worlds no one else wanted. He did not mention that human engineers had saved failing colonies, repaired broken infrastructure, and quietly solved problems that the Federation could not solve alone. None of that was being said today. Only fear was being fed. Then Zethar spoke the words that changed everything. "I call for Resolution 847B. Earth will be removed from the Galactic Federation. All human vessels must return to their home system within 30 standard days. After that, an energy barrier will seal their star system. No ship enters, no ship leaves. Humanity will be contained." For one long second, the chamber fell completely silent. Then the voting began. Green lights flashed across the room. Green for yes, green for banishment, green for fear. Sarah looked down at her panel. Around her, the chamber glowed like a field of cold green stars. Slowly, without shaking, she pressed the red button. One red light. Only one. When the vote ended, the result appeared above the chamber. 847 in favor, 1 against. The room burst into celebration, but Sarah Chen rose from her seat like someone attending a funeral, not a defeat. She walked to the center platform. The noise slowly faded. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm, too calm. "The Federation has made its choice," she said. "Humanity will obey the order. Our ships will return home. We will not resist the barrier." A few delegates looked relieved, but then Sarah's expression changed. Not anger, not fear, something sharper. "But let me make one thing clear," she said. "You voted to isolate Earth." Her eyes moved across the chamber. "You did not vote to erase humanity." And with that, she gave a small nod, turned and walked away, leaving behind a room full of cheering aliens who had no idea they had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. They thought they had trapped humanity in one star system. But Sarah Chen's final words carried a warning none of them understood, yet.
3 days after the vote, the first human ships began to move. Federation stations watched every route closely. Screens across military posts and traffic towers lit up with red markers, each one showing a human vessel heading back toward the solar system. Huge colony carriers moved like slow mountains in space. Cargo ships followed in clean lines. Research vessels slipped through the dark like silver needles. Even the feared human battleships traveled in silence. Admiral Crest stood in the Federation Defense Command and stared at the display with growing unease. He had expected anger. He had expected protests. He had expected at least one act of defiance. But what he saw was worse. Order. Perfect order. "Report," he said quietly. His young officer swallowed before answering. "All human ships are following the withdrawal plan exactly. No route violations, no delays, no hostile movement, no emergency messages." Crest narrowed his eyes. "Intercept their channels." "We already did, sir." "And?" The officer looked confused. "Almost nothing. Just short navigation signals, safety updates, and arrival windows. No panic, no arguments, no emotional traffic." That answer sat heavily in the room. Crest had served for 40 years. He had seen worlds fall into chaos over fuel shortages, trade disputes, even weather failures. When a people were forced from their homes, they cried, shouted, blamed someone, cursed someone, fought someone. Humans did none of that. They simply left. On Haven 7, Maria Santos packed the last box into a transport case, while her 2 children sat beside the doorway, holding small travel bags on their laps. The apartment around them was almost empty now. The bright wall drawings were gone. The shelves were bare. The rooms that once felt warm now echoed. "Are we really not coming back?" her daughter asked in a small voice. Maria paused. For 1 second, the brave face almost broke. She knelt and held both children close. "We're going where our people are," she whispered. "That matters more than any building." Outside, a Federation administrator named Jalen waited near the loading platform. He had come expecting anger, tears, maybe even a final demand to stay. Instead, every human family moved with strange calm. They lifted each other's bags. They carried old people gently. They walked in lines. They checked on strangers as if they were family. Jalen finally stepped toward Maria. "You are taking this better than I expected," he said. Maria looked at him with tired, steady eyes. "No, we are carrying it better than you expected." The answer hit him harder than a shout would have. As her children boarded the shuttle, Maria turned for one last look at the world where she had lived for 21 years. She remembered birthdays, storms, work shifts, neighbors, laughter. For a moment, grief rose in her chest so strongly she could barely breathe. But she did not cry. She lifted her chin and walked forward. Across the galaxy, the same scene repeated again and again. Humans left farms, factories, labs, schools, trade docks, hospitals, and defense stations. They did not curse the Federation. They did not beg for mercy. They did not explain themselves. They just went home. And everywhere they left, an odd emptiness remained. The markets still opened. The lights still worked. The system still ran. But somehow every place felt colder, as if something important had already gone missing before anyone noticed. And in control rooms all across Federation space, one question began to grow like a shadow. Why were the humans acting like this was not the end, but the beginning? By the 20th day, tiny failures began appearing across Federation space,
and the first leaders to notice them felt a fear they could not yet name. By the 20th day after humanity's withdrawal began, the first cracks started to show. At first, the problems looked small. A relay satellite near the Kepler routes stopped responding for 11 full minutes before coming back online. In the Vega mining belt, one automated platform began cutting ore output almost in half. On 3 trade lanes, navigation buoys started giving tiny errors, small enough to ignore at first, but dangerous if they kept spreading. Federation engineers blamed normal causes: aging parts, old software, radiation damage, routine system drift. Those things happened all the time. But this felt different. The failures were not dramatic. They were quiet, clean, almost polite. That was what unsettled Chief Engineer Voss the most. He stood in the central diagnostics hall, surrounded by floating reports and tired technicians. "Run a comparison across all affected systems," he ordered. "I want model age, maintenance history, software revisions, everything." A young analyst looked up from her console. "Sir, there is a pattern." Voss moved closer. "Show me." Lines of code opened in the air. At first glance, they looked normal. Federation coding structures, standard architecture, approved command language. But under the surface, hidden deep in the logic, there were tiny design choices, elegant shortcuts, clean correction loops, stability locks, fail-safe bridges. Human work. Not obvious human work. That would have been easy to spot. This was something else. "They built improvements inside our systems," the analyst whispered. "So deeply we stopped seeing them." Voss felt cold. Elsewhere, the galaxy continued pretending everything was under control. Then day 25 came. The last registered human vessel crossed into the solar system. Federation fleets moved into position. Across 30 days, 50 species had contributed power arrays, containment anchors, quantum seals, and layered shield designs. It was the greatest engineering effort in Federation history. And when the barrier was finally activated around Earth's star, the galaxy celebrated. Scanners saw nothing beyond it. Signals could not pass through. No ship could enter. No ship could leave. Earth was sealed. In the Grand Chamber, delegates praised one another. News channels called it a victory for peace. Some worlds even declared public holidays. For 2 days, it seemed they had won. On the 3rd day, the primary communication network between the capital and the outer colonies failed completely. Not weakened, not damaged, gone. Emergency teams rushed to the relay hubs. They found no explosion, no sabotage, no sign of attack. The system had simply stopped, like a musician dropping a baton in the middle of a performance. A week later, 3 major defense grids shut down without warning. Pirate groups struck 2 cargo lines before local fleets could respond. Then agricultural systems across 12 farming worlds began making impossible mistakes: wrong rain timing, broken crop cycles, failed harvest schedules. It was no longer a technical issue. It was panic. In an emergency council briefing, Voss faced a room full of frightened officials. "Tell us clearly," one delegate snapped. "Did the humans sabotage us?" Voss shook his head. "No." The room went still. "That is exactly the problem," he said. "They did not break our systems. Our systems are failing because human improvements are no longer supporting them. The old network designs, once enough for a smaller galaxy, were collapsing under modern demand. Deep inside the broken systems, his teams kept finding the same thing: human mathematics, human repair logic, human efficiency layers, hidden in plain sight. The vote to banish Earth approve. A silence fell over the chamber so heavy it almost felt alive. Then the lights flickered, once, twice, and for the first time since the vote, real fear entered the hearts of those who had cheered for Earth's exile, because now they understood one terrible truth. They had not locked away a threat. They had locked away the people holding their civilization together. The vote to banish Earth approve. As system after system failed,
One question finally reached the Federation Council, and no one in that room wanted to say it out loud. Would they have to beg humanity for help?
6 months after Earth disappeared behind the barrier, the Federation finally broke. It did not happen in one grand explosion. It happened in thousands of quiet failures that piled on top of each other until fear spread faster than any signal still working. On the mining world of Kepler, warning sirens screamed through the control towers before sunrise. Chief Operations Manager Fiss dropped her breakfast and ran to the command center. Every screen was red. Every station was flashing emergency alerts. "What happened?" she shouted. Her assistant, a young engineer named Vex, looked like he had not breathed in 10 seconds. "All automated facilities are down," he said. "Mining stations, transport hubs, processing lines, everything stopped at the same moment." Fiss stared at him. "Switch to manual." "We tried. Manual systems are tied into the central network. When that collapsed, we lost those too." For a second, she could only stand there. Kepler supplied rare materials to half the Federation. If Kepler failed, factories would fail next, then shipyards, then medicine labs, then defense production. One broken world could become a chain reaction. The source text's failures across Kepler, Prime Beta, and the trade hubs all point to the same buried dependence on human-built frameworks inside normal Federation systems. The vote to banish Earth approved. The vote to banish Earth approved. Vex pulled up the failure log. Strange names scrolled down the screen. Chen Patterson Management Protocol, Singh Efficiency Layer, Rodriguez Emergency Framework. Fiss looked at the names, and a cold feeling moved through her chest. Those were human names. Across the galaxy, the same truth was surfacing. Assembly lines on Prime Beta froze in place. Cargo sorting systems in Centauri locked up. Border defense controls slowed to a crawl. Deep inside every broken network, engineers found the same pattern: human logic, human repairs, human design, hidden so smoothly inside alien systems that most people had forgotten it was ever there. Federation engineers later realized the human work had been openly documented for years, but largely ignored because humans were dismissed as crude newcomers. The vote to banish Earth approved. In the Federation Emergency Command Center, Ambassador Zathar stood in front of a wall of disaster reports and felt his pride collapse, one piece at a time. "How did we not know?" he asked. Chief Engineer Voss looked exhausted, his voice dry from too many hours without rest. "We knew," he said quietly. "Or rather, they told us. We just never listened." He opened old reports in the air between them. Technical papers, training offers, system upgrades, efficiency models, design notes. Again and again, human names appeared. One report carried Sarah Chen's name from years before she became an ambassador. She had not only warned them politically, she had helped build the systems they now depended on. The vote to banish Earth approved. In the Federation Emergency Command Center, Ambassador Zathar stood in front of a wall of disaster reports and felt his pride collapse, one piece at a time. "How did we not know?" he asked. Chief Engineer Voss looked exhausted, his voice dry from too many hours without rest. "We knew," he said quietly. "Or rather, they told us. We just never listened." He opened old reports in the air between them. Technical papers, training offers, system upgrades, efficiency models, design notes. Again and again, human names appeared. One report carried Sarah Chen's name from years before she became an ambassador. She had not only warned them politically, she had helped build the systems they now depended on. The vote to banish Earth approved. Zathar felt sick. "So can we fix it ourselves?" Voss did not answer right away, and that silence was answer enough. Then another signal arrived. Medical stations in the Vega system were failing. Life support was unstable. Patients would die if help did not come soon. In the source, the barrier itself becomes the prison that prevents even basic contact with Earth when the Federation finally needs help. The vote to banish Earth approved. Zathar closed his eyes. The Federation had built the strongest cage in galactic history. Now they were trapped outside it. "Call the Council," he said at last. "We lower part of the barrier, we send a message to Earth." And for the first time since the vote, the man who had led humanity's banishment was forced to do the one thing he feared most. He had to ask them for help. But when the Federation finally opened a small gap in the barrier and sent its desperate message to Earth, the answer that came back did not come from one place, it came from everywhere.
3 days after the Federation voted to open a small section of the barrier, the signal was sent toward Earth. In the control chamber, no one spoke. Engineers watched the screens with tense faces. Officers stood still with their hands behind their backs. Even Ambassador Zathar, who once spoke with thunder in his voice, now looked worn down by fear and shame. The message had been simple. "This is the Galactic Federation Emergency Council. We request urgent communication with Earth. Federation infrastructure is failing. We need assistance." Then they waited. Most of them expected silence. Some expected delay. A few feared anger. What they did not expect was a reply in less than 2 minutes. The original script also places the answer almost immediately after the signal is sent, which makes the Federation realize something is very wrong with everything they believed. "The vote to banish Earth approve. The vote to banish Earth approve." A calm female voice filled the chamber. "This is Ambassador Sarah Chen, responding to your emergency request." Every person in the room froze. One engineer checked his instruments so fast he nearly knocked over his console. Another pulled up long-range readings, then stared in disbelief. "Sir," he whispered to Zathar, "the signal is coming from inside the Sol system." He swallowed hard. "And from 49 other points across Federation space." That was when the room truly went cold. Zathar stepped forward. "Ambassador Chen," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "our systems are suffering major failures. Our engineers believe the problem is connected to the absence of human support layers inside Federation technology. We are asking for help." Sarah did not answer right away. When she finally spoke, her tone was calm, almost polite. "I understand," she said, "but before we discuss help, we need to clear up one very important misunderstanding." The officers looked at one another. No one liked the sound of that. "What misunderstanding?" Zathar asked. "The Federation voted to isolate Earth," Sarah said. "You built a barrier around one star system. You successfully trapped our homeworld, our moon, our inner defenses, and every ship that returned there." She paused. "But you never trapped humanity." The room fell silent except for the low hum of machines. Zathar felt his stomach tighten. "That is impossible." A very small laugh came through the speakers. It was not loud. It was not mocking. Somehow that made it worse. "No," Sarah said softly, "it is simply the truth. Humanity stopped being limited to Earth about 2 centuries ago. We built settlements, shipyards, research stations, supply depots, and hidden communities across deep space, not in secret to attack you, in quiet because no one bothered to look closely. And many of your own detection systems were built on human-designed logic. The vote to banish Earth approve. The vote to banish Earth approve." A calm female voice filled the chamber. One engineer sank into his chair. Another just whispered, "How many of you are out there?" Sarah's answer came without drama. "Enough." The single word landed harder than a threat. Zathar lowered his head for a moment.
For the first time, he fully understood the size of their mistake. They had celebrated too early. They had locked away a symbol, not a civilization. Then he forced himself to speak. "We were wrong," he said. "Tell us what humanity wants." This time, when Sarah answered, the kindness in her voice had steel under it. "You made rules for Earth. Now humanity is going to make rules for the galaxy." And then the signal cut. The chamber remained silent long after she was gone, because now the Federation knew the truth. Earth was behind the barrier, but humanity was everywhere. The next time Sarah Chan appeared, she would not come alone, and the Federation would finally see who had really been running the galaxy all along.
The Federation Council had seen many historic meetings, but never one like this. The grand Capitol Hall was too unstable now for a full gathering, so the meeting happened through emergency communication links. Holograms flickered across dark rooms on dozens of worlds. Some delegates sat under weak backup lights. Others were surrounded by warning screens, failing systems, and frightened aides. The proud center of galactic power no longer looked powerful at all. That collapse-driven emergency meeting and Sarah Chen appearing before a scattered, weakened council comes directly from the uploaded script's next section. The vote to banish Earth approved. Then Sarah Chen appeared. She stood in the center of the shared projection, calm as ever, but this time she was not alone. Behind her stood rows of humans. Some wore plain work clothes. Some wore military uniforms. Some had the quiet eyes of scientists who had not slept enough. Others looked like engineers, doctors, pilots, commanders, planners, the kind of people who kept civilizations alive while others took the credit. The effect on the delegates was immediate. Fear. Not loud fear, not panic. The colder kind. The kind that enters a room when everyone realizes they have misunderstood reality. "Distinguished delegates," Sarah said, her voice steady and almost warm, "thank you for accepting our invitation." Representative Callis gave a bitter laugh. "Invitation? Our transport networks are broken. Our communication systems are collapsing. We had no choice but to join this meeting." Sarah nodded slightly. "Exactly. Now you are beginning to understand the shape of the problem." Across the chamber, Zethar's projection flickered as his local power failed for a second and returned. He looked older than before, smaller somehow. "Ambassador Chen," he said carefully, "the Federation is willing to admit mistakes were made. We are prepared to discuss the return of human membership." Sarah's face did not change, but the room somehow felt colder. "You still do not understand," she said. "The Federation voted to banish Earth. That decision stands. Earth remains quarantined, exactly as you ordered. Humanity is not asking to return." A murmur spread across the delegates. Then Sarah turned slightly and gestured to the humans behind her. "Let me introduce some people the Federation should have respected long ago." A woman stepped forward first. Dr. Elena Martinez. She has been managing agricultural systems that support billions of Federation citizens from a remote human facility far beyond your official maps. Then a broad-shouldered officer stepped forward. Commander David Jackson. His fleets have protected trade routes from pirates and raiders for 2 decades, often without recognition and usually without your knowledge. Then came another figure, thin, serious, wearing the tired look of a brilliant mind. Professor Hana Lee. She designed major parts of the communication structures that allow your worlds to speak across the stars. One by one, the humans stepped into the light. No dramatic speeches, no anger. That made it hit even harder, because they looked like people who had already done the work, already carried the burden, and no longer needed permission to admit it.
The source explicitly reveals hidden human leaders in agriculture, defense, and communications, showing the Federation had been relying on them for years without understanding it. The vote to banish Earth approved. The vote to banish Earth approved. Sarah looked across the silent chamber. For 200 years, Sarah said, humanity has helped keep galactic civilization stable. We repaired your systems, defended your trade lanes, fed populations you could not support alone, and every time we documented what we did. Representative Fiss leaned forward sharply. Then why did no one know? This time, Professor Lee answered, "You knew, you just did not listen." And in that moment, shame began to spread through the Federation faster than fear ever had, because the truth was finally standing in front of them, and it had human faces. Then Sarah Chen revealed what humanity actually wanted from the Federation, and her terms were so calm, so simple, and so final that no one in the chamber could pretend they still had control.
The room stayed silent for a long time after Sarah Chen finished introducing the people behind her. No one wanted to speak first. No one wanted to ask the next question, because deep down, every delegate already understood the truth. Humanity had not come to beg for a place in the Federation. Humanity had come to show what had been true for a very long time. They had already been holding the galaxy together. The vote to banish Earth At last, Ambassador Zethar lifted his head. His face looked tired. His voice had lost the old sharp pride it once carried. "What do you want from us?" he asked. Sarah looked at him with calm, steady eyes. Not cruel, not angry, just certain. "We want to stop pretending," she said. A faint murmur moved through the dark chamber. Sarah stepped forward one small step, and suddenly it felt as if she was standing in every room at once. "For 200 years," she said, "humanity has repaired systems, protected trade routes, improved communication, supported food production, and solved crisis after crisis. We did it quietly. We did it without demanding praise. We did it because we believed the galaxy could become something better if someone chose responsibility over pride." She paused. "But that quiet arrangement is over." Representative Fiss leaned forward, her voice tense. "Say clearly what that means." Sarah nodded once. "It means the Federation will continue to exist," she said. "Your worlds will remain your own. Your cultures will remain your own. Your local leaders will continue managing local matters. Humanity is not here to erase anyone." Several delegates looked relieved. Then Sarah continued. "But on matters of galactic stability, technology, infrastructure, defense, and emergency response, human leadership will be recognized openly. No more hiding, no more pretending our work is optional, no more ignoring warnings until something breaks." The relief vanished from the room. Representative Clicks made a harsh sound in his throat. "You are asking us to surrender." "No," Sarah said gently. "I am asking you to admit reality." Behind her, thousands of little lights appeared in the shared hologram. They spread across the map of the galaxy like stars waking up in the dark. Gasps filled the meeting. "What are those?" someone whispered. Sarah did not smile this time. "Human facilities," she said. "Colonies, research centers, shipyards, supply hubs, repair stations, listening posts, manufacturing sites, hidden communities, all operating beyond your notice for decades." The map kept glowing. The number was impossible to ignore. The Federation had not been living beside one human world. It had been living inside a human network. Commander Jackson stepped forward, his broad shoulders straight, his expression calm. "In practical terms," he said,
Human patrol fleets will no longer hide from your sensors. Human engineers will enter failing systems with full authority to make necessary changes. Human settlements will be added to official maps, and when humanity identifies a serious threat to galactic security, delay and political games will end. Action will happen. The words landed like iron. Representative Fiss rose halfway from her seat. "You expect us to become subjects." Sarah answered before anyone else could. "You already depended on us," she said. "The only difference is that now you know it." The chamber shook with anger, fear, shame, disbelief. One delegate spoke up from a dimly lit corner. "And if we refuse?" This time Dr. Martinez answered. Her voice was soft, but it hit like a blade. "Then you continue alone," she said. "No human repairs, no human protection, no human improvements, no hidden support. You return to the level your systems were at before we started helping." No one spoke after that. They all remembered the last 6 months. Dark networks, failing hospitals, frozen factories, silent defense grids, hungry worlds, panic. Sarah's face softened just slightly. "The good news," she said, "is that humanity still chooses to stand with galactic civilization. We do not want to rule through fear. We want the authority to do openly what we have already been doing in silence." Zethar closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them again, something inside him had changed. Not pride, not yet respect, but acceptance. Because for the first time, the Federation was staring at truth with nowhere left to run. Then the debate began, and before it was over, one frightened delegate would accuse humanity of blackmail, forcing Sarah Chen to give the coldest answer anyone in that chamber had ever heard.
For a few seconds after Dr. Martinez finished speaking, no one in the chamber moved. The delegates sat in dim light, surrounded by failing screens and weak power, staring at Sarah Chen as if she had just pushed the floor out from under them. Then one voice broke the silence. "This is blackmail." It came from Representative Clicks. His tone was sharp, but fear shook under it. "You let our systems fail, and now you offer help only if we accept your control. Call it what you want, it is still blackmail." A few others made sounds of agreement. Not many. Most were too tired, too frightened, or too honest with themselves to pretend the accusation solved anything. Sarah did not react with anger. That somehow made the moment even heavier. She looked at Clicks with steady, patient eyes. Then she spoke in a voice so calm that every word landed harder than a shout. "No," she said, "this is reality." The chamber went quiet again. "For centuries," Sarah continued, "your worlds were free to build better systems, study the tools we shared, train your engineers, and protect your own futures. We did not stop you. We did not hide what we were doing. We documented our work. We filed reports. We offered training. We published improvements. Again and again, humanity explained how these systems worked, and again, your people chose not to pay attention." That exact point appears in the source. Human improvements were documented openly, but the Federation ignored them because humans were dismissed as primitive newcomers. The vote to banish Earth— Clicks opened his mouth, but Sarah raised one hand and he fell silent. "You call this blackmail because the truth is painful," Sarah said. "But pain does not change truth. You relied on human solutions while pretending they were your own. You enjoyed human protection while speaking about human danger. You benefited from our work while treating us like a problem to be managed." The words spread through the chamber like cold water. Across several projections, delegates looked down. Some looked ashamed, some looked angry, but none of them denied it. Ambassador Zethar stood still for a long moment. His face was hard to read now. The old pride was still there somewhere, but it was buried under failure. "You are saying," he asked slowly, "that the Federation was already living under human support, without realizing it?" Sarah gave a small nod. "Yes," she said, "and now you must decide whether to face that truth honestly." She turned and motioned toward the star map still glowing behind her. Thousands of human locations still shone across the dark. Colonies, stations, shipyards, supply centers, quiet places no one had seen because no one had really looked. The source describes these hidden human facilities as a parallel civilization operating everywhere, essential yet unseen. "The vote to banish Earth approve—" Clicks opened his mouth, but Sarah raised one hand and he fell silent. "Commander Jackson stepped forward," he said. "We are not here to punish the galaxy. We are here to stop pretending. If civilization is going to survive, then the people doing the real work must be allowed to do it openly." Professor Lee spoke next, her voice tired but kind. "You do not need to love us," she said. "You do not even need to trust us yet. But you do need to understand one thing. Your systems are dying faster than your politics can move." That line broke something in the room, because everyone knew it was true. Then Sarah looked back at the delegates one last time. "Humanity is still offering partnership," she said, "but this time it will be an honest partnership. No masks, no lies, no pretending that your civilization runs without us." No one answered. No one could, because for the first time in a very long time, the Federation was being forced to see itself clearly, and the picture was not flattering. Before the session ended, Ambassador Zethar finally made the hardest choice of his life, and what he said next changed the balance of the galaxy forever.
No one expected Ambassador Zethar to be the first one to surrender. For years, he had been the loudest voice against humanity. He had stood in the great chamber with his head high, his words sharp, his confidence unshaken. He had called humans dangerous. He had called them too independent, too violent, too hard to control. Now he stood in a room lit by failing backup power, surrounded by broken screens and frightened delegates, and felt the full weight of his own mistake. No one spoke. The silence after Sarah Chen's words felt heavier than any argument. Then Zethar slowly straightened his back. Every eye turned toward him. He looked older than he had 6 months ago. The strong, stone-like confidence he once carried had cracked. What remained was not pride. It was something harder. Truth. He took a slow breath. "The Federation," he said, and his voice nearly failed on the first word, "accepts humanity's terms." The chamber exploded. Some delegates shouted in anger. Others cried out in disbelief. A few rose from their seats so suddenly that their holograms shook and blurred. Representative Clicks looked as if he had been struck across the face. "You cannot do that," he shouted. "You do not have authority to hand us over." Zethar turned toward him. For the first time in many cycles, there was no arrogance in his face, only exhaustion and bitter understanding. "I do," he said quietly, "and I must." The room trembled with noise, but Sarah said nothing. She simply watched. Zethar raised one arm for silence. "You all heard the reports," he said. "You all saw the failures. Food production has collapsed. Communication networks are dying. Defense systems are weakening. We are not debating philosophy anymore. We are deciding whether galactic civilization survives the next year." That hit harder than any insult could have, because everyone knew he was right. Chief Engineer Voss stepped forward from the side of the chamber, his face pale and drawn. "The hidden human support network has already started transmitting repair guidance to affected systems," he said.
In the last hour alone, several sectors have shown signs of recovery. The source says that once the terms are worked out, hidden human facilities begin sending repair instructions, stabilizing communications, food systems, and defenses. The vote to banish Earth approved. Representative Fiss stared at him. "You mean they can fix this already?" Voss gave a weak nod. "Yes, faster than we can understand it." A bitter laugh slipped from one of the darkened corners of the chamber. It sounded more like defeat than humor. Sarah finally stepped forward. "Humanity does not need your humiliation. We need your cooperation." That line changed the mood. Not much, but enough. Because there was no mockery in her voice, no cruelty, only steady command. The same calm position is in the source. Humanity does not want to destroy the Federation, but wants recognition and authority to do openly what it has already been doing for 2 centuries. The vote to banish Earth approved. One by one, the delegates began to understand. This was not a revenge speech. This was a transfer of reality. The old lie was ending. The galaxy had been running on human hands for generations. Now, everyone would simply stop pretending otherwise. The source makes this explicit. The difference is not new control, but that now everyone knew who was really in charge. The vote to banish Earth approved. Then Sarah lifted her hand. Behind her, the star map brightened. Thousands of human outposts shone across the galaxy, like a second hidden civilization finally stepping into daylight. And in that moment, the Federation did something it had never done before. It stopped arguing with truth. It bowed to it. Within hours, hidden human systems began waking up across the galaxy, and worlds that had spent months falling apart were about to see what happened when humanity stopped hiding its power.
For a long moment after Ambassador Zethar accepted humanity's terms, no one in the chamber said a word. It was as if the whole galaxy had stopped breathing. Some delegates looked angry, some looked broken, some looked like they had just watched their old world disappear in front of them, but none of them could deny what had happened. The truth was too clear now. Humanity had not stepped into power that day. Humanity had already been carrying the weight of galactic civilization for generations. The only change was that now everyone could finally see it. The vote to banish Earth approved. Sarah Chen stood in silence for a few seconds, letting that truth settle into every room, every weak signal line, every frightened heart. Then she gave one small nod, and the galaxy began to change. At first, the changes were tiny. On a farming moon near the Vega sector, dead irrigation towers suddenly woke up. Dry fields that had been waiting in fear for water began to move again as pumps restarted one by one. In an outer trade corridor, navigation lights that had been dark for days blinked back to life in a perfect line through the black. On a border defense station where exhausted crews had been preparing for the worst, warning systems lit green instead of red for the first time in weeks. Across the Federation, hidden human outposts started revealing themselves, not with speeches, not with threats, with results. Signals burst from places no one had noticed before. Small stations near asteroid belts, quiet repair platforms drifting beside forgotten routes, manufacturing hubs hidden behind dust clouds, deep space relays placed so far from major worlds that no one had ever cared to look twice. Each one came online with calm precision. The source describes thousands of hidden human facilities, colonies, and outposts that begin openly supporting the galaxy once the new arrangement is accepted. The vote to banish Earth approved.
Chief Engineer Voss stood in Federation Emergency Command, staring at the recovery reports flooding in across his screens. "Food systems are stabilizing," one officer said. "Communication loss reduced by 40%, said another. 3 defense grids back online. Cargo movement resuming in Centauri lanes." Voss sank slowly into his chair. Not because he was weak, because the relief hit too hard. For months he had watched systems die one after another. Now they were returning faster than his teams could even track. Not patched, not barely surviving, returning properly. Returning clean, returning stronger. On Kepler, Chief Manager Fiss watched mining controls come alive across her central board. Machines that had sat frozen for days now moved with perfect timing. Ore lines corrected themselves, safety systems reset. Output projections rose so quickly that her assistant had to recalculate twice. "How?" Vex whispered. Fiss stared at the screen, then answered in a low voice. "They were always this close." In the Grand Council network, the delegates kept watching the star map behind Sarah Chen. Those lights did not look small anymore. They looked like a second galaxy hidden inside the first. Sarah finally spoke again. "Humanity will begin full stabilization immediately," she said. "There will be no revenge, no punishment, and no chaos. There will only be order. But from this day on, no one will pretend that order comes from Federation politics alone." Her voice was calm, kind almost, but final. And in that moment, every species in that chamber understood something they could never forget. Humanity had stopped hiding, and the galaxy worked better the moment it did. Within 1 week, Federation space was running better than it had in years, but that new peace came with a painful truth. Now everyone knew who was really in charge. The first week after the agreement felt unreal. For months, the Federation had lived in fear. Cities had dimmed. Trade routes had frozen. Farms had slowed. Defense stations had waited in silence, wondering if the next alarm would be the one they could not answer. People on hundreds of worlds had gone to sleep each night, not knowing what would fail next. Then, one by one, the systems came back. Not slowly, not with confusion, with confidence. Across Federation space, hidden human stations revealed themselves and began sending repair instructions, replacement parts, software corrections, and direct support teams. Food distribution lines started moving again. Long-range communication stabilized. Defense systems powered back up. Within a single week, large parts of the galaxy were functioning better than they had in months. The source text makes this turning point explicit. Once the details were agreed, hidden human facilities came online, transmitted repairs, restarted food production, stabilized communications, and restored defenses. The vote to banish Earth approved. On Prime Beta, assembly lines that had been dead for weeks began moving with perfect rhythm. On the Centauri trade hub, cargo systems restarted so smoothly that some workers stood and watched in silence, unable to believe what they were seeing. On the frontier worlds, defense officers looked at their restored control panels with something close to prayer in their eyes. But relief came with a new feeling: humility. Everyone now knew the truth. This was not a recovery built by the Federation. It was a recovery allowed by humanity. Ambassador Zethar stood alone in a high observation room above the capital district and looked down at the city lights returning in waves. For the first time in many days, the skyline looked alive again. Towers glowed, transit routes moved, emergency sirens went silent. He should have felt victorious. Instead, he felt small. Chief Engineer Voss entered quietly behind him. "The latest reports are in," he said.
System stability is higher than projected. Human correction layers are not just restoring old performance, they are improving it. Zethar let out a slow breath. "Of course they are," he said. Voss hesitated. "There is more. Human representatives are requesting permanent access teams in major infrastructure centers: agriculture, communications, transport, defense, health systems. They want full transparency and direct authority over large-scale failures." Zethar gave a tired, bitter smile. "They are asking for permission to do what they were already doing." "Yes," Voss replied. That was the hardest part for many delegates to accept. Humanity had not taken power in one dramatic moment. Humanity had been carrying responsibility for centuries while others enjoyed the results and ignored the effort. As Sarah Chen explained in the source, humanity wanted recognition and authority to do openly what it had already been doing in silence for 200 years. The vote to banish Earth. On world after world, official notices began appearing. Human engineering authority recognized. Human patrol fleets authorized in open space. Human colonies added to approved star maps. Human emergency directives to be treated as binding in major crises. Many species accepted the change with relief. Some accepted it with shame. A few accepted it with quiet anger. But they all accepted it, because they had seen the other option. They had lived through the dark version of the galaxy, and no one wanted to go back there. Later that cycle, Sarah Chen appeared once more through the secure transmission. Her face was calm, her voice steady, but this time something softer rested under her words. "You feared human independence," she said. "Now you are learning what that independence actually means. It means we can survive without your approval. But it also means that when we choose to help, things work." No one argued. No one could. The old Federation still existed. Its banners still flew. Its councils still met. Its laws still held in local matters. But the center of real power had moved. Not through war, not through conquest, through competence. And deep in their hearts, every delegate understood the same painful truth. The galaxy had not fallen under human rule. The galaxy had finally admitted it already was. Only one question remained now. When the barrier around Earth was finally discussed again, what would humanity do with the world the Federation had tried to cage?
The question spread through the galaxy faster than any official order. Now that humanity had stepped into the light, what would happen to Earth? For 6 long months, the homeworld of humanity had remained locked behind the barrier the Federation built with pride. The same barrier that was meant to isolate, weaken, and contain had become a living reminder of the Federation's greatest mistake. Every delegate knew it. Every world knew it. And now, with human systems openly stabilizing the galaxy, there was only one unfinished piece left in the story. Would humanity tear the barrier down? Would they punish the Federation? Or would they leave Earth sealed forever as a warning no one could ignore? The final council session was held in full silence. No shouting, no proud speeches, no celebration. Only the low hum of restored systems and the quiet weight of history pressing down on everyone in the room. Ambassador Sarah Chen appeared at the center of the chamber once again, but this time her expression was different. She still carried the same calm strength, the same clear control, but there was something softer in her eyes, something personal, because this was not just politics. This was home. Ambassador Zethar stood to speak first. He did not hide behind formal language now. He did not decorate his guilt with careful words. "The Federation acted in fear," he said. "We called it caution. We called it order. But the truth is simpler. We were afraid of humanity, and we tried to punish what we did not understand. For that,
There is no excuse." The chamber remained still. Zethar lowered his head. "On behalf of the Federation, I formally request the dissolution of the soul barrier. Earth should be free." It was the first honest thing many of them had ever heard him say. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned her eyes across the chamber, toward all the worlds, all the delegates, all the species who had once voted to lock her people away. "When you sealed Earth," she said, "many of you believed you were ending the human question, but you were really answering a different one." No one moved. "You showed us who would stand with us when power shifted. You showed us who would value our work and who would smile while using it. You showed us what fear becomes when it is given authority." Her words were not loud. They did not need to be. "But Earth," she said, and now her voice grew warmer, "was never just a prison. Earth is where we began. It is where our story started. It is where we learned how to lose, how to hope, how to build again after fire, flood, war, and ruin. You could not erase that by surrounding a star." Some delegates closed their eyes. Some looked down. Some simply listened with the stillness of people hearing truth too late. Sarah drew one slow breath. "Humanity has discussed this fully," she said, "and we have made our decision." The room seemed to stop breathing. "The barrier around Earth will be removed." A wave moved through the chamber, not celebration, not yet. Relief, shock, something close to disbelief. But Sarah raised her hand, and silence returned. "The barrier will be removed," she repeated, "not because the Federation deserves easy forgiveness, not because we forgot what was done, and not because humanity needs permission to free its own home." Her eyes sharpened. "It will be removed because we will not build our future out of the same fear that was used against us." That line settled deep into the room, a quiet, painful, beautiful truth. Commander Jackson stepped forward behind her. Professor Lee stood beside him, Dr. Martinez too. The same people who had carried the hidden weight of the galaxy now stood openly, not as conquerors, but as witnesses. Sarah's voice softened again. "We do not want a galaxy ruled by humiliation," she said. "We want a galaxy that finally grows up. A galaxy where strength means responsibility, where leadership means service, where peace is built by those willing to do the work, not just claim the title." And for the first time since the vote to banish Earth, tears appeared in more than one set of eyes across the chamber, because now they understood the deepest truth of all. Humanity had every reason to become cruel, and they chose not to. Hours later, fleets of human engineering vessels moved toward the Sol system. Across thousands of screens, the galaxy watched as the barrier that once shone like a prison wall began to dim. Layer by layer, seal by seal, the cage came apart in total silence. Then Earth appeared again, blue, white, alive. Not broken, not bowed, home. On the surface, people gathered in cities, villages, deserts, mountains, orbital stations, and coastlines to watch the sky open. Some cried, some laughed, some stood in stunned silence, holding each other as if trying to make the moment real. Ambassador Sarah Chen watched from orbit as the final layer vanished. Behind her, the stars stretched wide and open. In front of her, Earth turned slowly in the light, and in that quiet, she finally allowed herself to feel everything she had carried since the vote. The anger, the grief, the pride, the love. Then she spoke one last time to the galaxy. "You tried to isolate humanity," she said. "Instead, you revealed it. You tried to shut one world away. Instead, you forced us to show how far we had already gone." Her eyes stayed on Earth. "Humanity has discussed this fully," she said,
and we have made our decision. The Earth was free, and the galaxy, at last, understood the rule that always mattered most. Never mistake human patience for weakness, and never force humanity to prove what it has become. Conclusion: the vote that was meant to bury humanity became the moment humanity stepped into the open. The cage failed, the fear failed, the lie failed, but humanity did not. Because in the end, the strongest force in the galaxy was not fear, power, or control. It was the quiet strength of people who kept building, kept helping, and kept standing back up, until the whole universe had no choice but to see them clearly. Final line: they voted to banish Earth and ended up witnessing the rise of humanity. May this message strengthen your faith and renew your hope. Thank you for staying until the end. If this touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to Astro Realms for more uplifting content. May God's blessings overflow in your life. See you soon.